When this cheetah delivered a record 5 cubs, it was supposed to be a day of celebration. But one shocking twist left the entire staff screaming and launched the zoo into the international spotlight. At that moment, the team anxiously watched the young vet's big moment unfold. Hunched over the security camera monitor, they were equally worried about their colleague and the cubs' safety. This was a critical situation. Taking a deep breath, the vet carefully moved into the small enclosure, never taking his eyes off the cheetah. The biggest question on everyone's mind was how Milani would respond to his presence. When cheetahs give birth, they typically react to people with fierce protectiveness. They growl, hiss, and flash their teeth to scare off any perceived danger. And everyone at the research center knew Milani wasn't the most relaxed cheetah, especially not during her pregnancy. That pregnancy was just one of many unbelievable chapters in her story. Milani had been rescued from poachers in Namibia, and she was now the star at the Metro Richmond Zoo, a major center for cheetah research. The facility had launched the Cheetah Conservation Center, where teams of vets tracked health, social behavior, and population growth. Over the years, hundreds of experts had worked with the program, all focused on boosting cheetah numbers. But now all their hopes were pinned on one aging female, Milani. Time was running out, and if she didn't have cubs soon, it could hurt the entire repopulation effort. Aside from her age, Milani was picky. 6 male cheetahs had shown interest, but she ignored them all. They would let out their signature barking calls, only to be met with total indifference. Milani wouldn't even glance in their direction before strolling back into her enclosure. Rather than looking for a mate, Milani preferred to roam alone, calmly exploring acres of grassland. Still, she had no shortage of admirers. Her beauty was unmatched, and researchers were fascinated by her. Her golden coat, covered in a pattern of unique black spots, shimmered under the sun. Her slender build gave her the power to reach incredible speeds in the blink of an eye whenever she decided to sprint. Milani sliced through the air, changing direction with astonishing agility. Researchers often caught glimpses of her in motion, climbing trees or sneaking through thick bushes, perfectly built for stalking prey and earning her the title of apex predator. But none of that really mattered, because Milani was just too particular when it came to choosing a mate. Though she was now safe from poachers, her biggest threat was starting to come from inside her own body. After years of solitude, the zoo's vets finally saw a real chance to encourage Milani to mate. That chance came with a newcomer, Bo. He had potential. He was also from Namibia, and the animal rights group that brought him in believed that he and Milani might have crossed paths before, back when they were younger. They could have been from related family groups. As always, the zoo team introduced the pair slowly, letting them see each other from a distance. Milani walked cautiously through the field toward the new arrival, unsure at first, just watching him. But then, something shifted. It became clear Milani recognized him. Bo let out a familiar barking sound, his way of signaling that he was ready to mate. That had never been the problem, though. He was on her turf, and the decision was entirely hers. To everyone's surprise, she didn't shy away. She gently rubbed her head against his broad, muscular body, greeting him with tenderness, something no other cheetah had seen from her before at the zoo. The research team watched with bated breath, waiting not just for the mating to happen, but also for what would follow. In the days after, it was confirmed. Milani was pregnant. While the pairing had looked simple, it came after months of behind-the-scenes planning and research. Experts had different ideas about how to create the right environment, and Bo had been carefully chosen for her. Thankfully, all the effort paid off. But that was only the beginning of a much bigger surprise. This was huge. Any increase in the cheetah population was a major win. But then the ultrasound showed something unexpected. 5 cheetahs were growing inside her. Her belly soon swelled larger than anyone had seen before. But just as the joy spread through the zoo community, worry crept in. the mood shifted. The odds of all 5 cubs surviving and of Milani making it through safely were slim. She had sustained a serious injury to her stomach during her time in captivity. Though the scar on her chest had mostly healed, internal damage still lingered. It wasn't clear whether she would be able to support 5 cubs at once. As the birth neared, the 5 cubs were pressing heavily against her intestines, making it difficult for them to function properly. Facing a dilemma with Milani, the research team chose not to intervene. The risks of childbirth were carefully weighed, but the future of the species rested with places like Metro Richmond Zoo. For now, cheetahs in the wild stood little chance. Over the last century, their population had dropped by more than 90%. It had taken years for Milani's first pregnancy, and if they ended it now, there was no way of knowing how long it would take for another. After many long discussions, the team decided the risk was worth taking. They would stay vigilant and intervene only if absolutely necessary. With each passing week, the pregnancy became more dangerous. Moved into a smaller enclosure, Milani now received constant attention. Surrounded by advanced monitoring equipment, researchers were forced to observe from a distance, and they could see that Milani was growing weaker, sometimes even refusing food. She also became more aggressive, wary of humans, and constantly on edge. One day, while a zoo staff member was feeding meat to her, she suddenly charged, clawing at the fence and sending him stumbling backward. He scrambled back into the truck, shaken. The growing pressure and stress were clearly taking a toll on Milani's already fragile pregnancy. This had never happened before, and it was the closest she had ever come to attacking anyone. Milani was now considered a high-risk animal and had to be handled with extreme caution. There was now a new concern surrounding the pregnancy. How could the keepers help her if she wouldn't allow them close? Even after years of care, Milani still didn't trust them. The staff feared she might never fully recover from her traumatic past in Namibia. To her, they looked like the poachers, with their tools and vehicles, who had taken her family. This fear was about to become life-threatening. As the birth date drew closer, nerves intensified, and a round-the-clock surveillance operation began, ensuring the team was ready at any moment. Days before the birth, a small enclosure was built next to her usual area. It was a dark birthing box, just 18 feet long and 6 feet wide. She seemed confused by it at first, but it wouldn't take long for her to grow used to it. Around 4 in the morning the following day, while the world outside remained pitch black and silent, Milani felt the contractions begin to ripple through her body. She slowly moved toward the box. The team watched anxiously through a live camera, ready to act if something went wrong. Milani struggled to get comfortable, standing up, then sitting down again and again, growing impatient. No matter what she did, she couldn't find the right position. The contractions intensified, and her body continued to push from within while she stayed calm on the outside. With her final push, a tiny cub dropped out from behind her, a soft thud on the hay below, wriggling around but barely conscious. The senses of the world filled its eyes and ears while it grappled with a new movement of his body. The surveillance room erupted with celebration, but that joy was quickly tempered by the realization they were only 1/5 through the ordeal. Half an hour later, a second baby emerged from Milani. The time between each birth began to stretch, and the mother was clearly growing weary. It had still been dark when she first went into labor and crawled into the birthing enclosure. But by the time the third cub arrived, morning sunlight was shining down, revealing the tiny bodies of the new arrivals, now slowly coming into focus under the team's careful observation. Milani used the last of her strength to gently examine each of her newborns, licking, nudging, and poking them to make sure they were okay. The cubs wasted no time cuddling close to their mother. When the final cub came into view, another round of cheers broke out from the team. What no one knew yet was that this last cub would be the one to make them scream. Now came the hardest and most crucial part. The moment of truth had arrived. A vet was preparing to enter the enclosure to examine the cubs in person. The chosen vet had already built some trust with Milani. But he was young and didn't have much hands-on experience, and as he approached, waves of nerves washed over him. This wasn't just any cheetah. It was a new mother. How would Milani respond to his approach? Would she defend her cubs aggressively and attack him? Milani locked eyes with the vet, tension thick in the air. It was his first time ever being this close to a cheetah, especially one that had just given birth. The experience couldn't have been more different from feeding her through a fence. Nervously watching over the young vet's big moment, the rest of the team crowded around the surveillance monitor, worried for his safety. With a deep breath, the vet steadied himself and started to step slowly into the enclosure, eyes fixed on the cheetah. He couldn't forget that just weeks ago, Milani had fiercely protected her food, charging at a zookeeper. No one could predict how she'd respond now that her cubs were involved. Milani stared carefully at the stranger entering her space, but then she stunned everyone by rolling over, revealing her 5 cubs curled up together beneath her. It was as if she understood why he was there. She relaxed her body, offering him access, and took a moment to rest. Breathing a sigh of relief, the vet got to work. First, he examined Milani herself, especially the area around her stomach injury. Thankfully, she seemed unhurt, just completely drained. He then picked up each cub gently, wearing gloves. One by one, he used tools from his kit to check their vitals: a small scale, sample tubes, and a flashlight to test the responsiveness of their eyes. Collecting all the data he could, the vet hurriedly packed his bag and took samples back to the lab. But he could already tell that things were not looking good. The 5th cub didn't seem to have a healthy weight, and its head looked larger than normal, making its body seem even smaller in comparison. Results came back confirming that the youngest was suffering from a birth defect. Time was critical now, and the team had to act fast. But before they could do anything, the cub's condition began to decline. It was having trouble breathing. The young vet rushed into the enclosure. There was no time to wait for Milani's approval. Thankfully, she was sound asleep after the exhausting delivery. He gently scooped up the cub and rushed it to a nearby medical tent, calling out to the staff that they were losing him. Resuscitations, injections, a defibrillator, every possible effort was made. But sadly, nothing worked. The tiny cub was barely clinging to life. There was no chance of recovery. The surveillance room went quiet, and with heavy hearts, the team made the decision to euthanize the young cub to prevent further suffering. Milani sensed something was wrong, but was too weak to respond. She seemed to accept her loss. The silver lining was that the other 4 cubs were strong and healthy. The vet checked in regularly, bottle-feeding them to make sure they all received enough nourishment. What once would have been a nerve-wracking process became more manageable over time. Milani was hesitant in the beginning, scared of losing another cub. But each time the same young vet approached gently, calmly, helping her feel safe. After more than 7 years, Milani was finally beginning to warm up to her zookeepers. Her aggression eased, and occasionally she would even give a gentle bump of the head. The team was grateful to see her respond this way, and still amazed at the miracle she had made possible. But what Milani was about to do next would leave them completely stunned, and it wouldn't just stop at the zoo. Soon, Milani would make headlines around the world. 2 years later, during a particularly hot summer, lightning struck again. Milani became pregnant once more, much to the joy of the zookeepers. This time, however, things were different. She wasn't alone. Milani was one of 3 cheetahs expecting cubs at the same time. All 3 had conceived within days of each other. It was shaping up to be chaos for the already overworked zoo team, who remembered how demanding Milani's last pregnancy had been. There was also another concern: Vela? Along with another female, Vela was a first-time mother. While Wai was fairly calm and steady, Vela became difficult as her pregnancy advanced. She began snarling and growling at staff, and even lashed out at another female during a tense moment. But Milani, having been through it all before, was ready to step up and help. As the oldest and largest of the group, she commanded respect and used it to keep the peace. The next time Vela snarled at a zookeeper, Milani let out an explosive yelp, sending shockwaves through the air. Everyone froze, including the zookeeper and Vela. Milani had never shown that level of aggression toward another cheetah before. Her mouth opened wide, teeth bared in a powerful display of dominance, sending Vela scurrying away. That was her first and final warning, and thanks to its intensity, Vela never needed a second. Over time, she came to understand that the zookeepers were there to help her. Slowly and reluctantly, she settled down, clearly afraid of upsetting Milani again. But even with Vela now under control, that wasn't enough to solve the challenges the zoo was facing. The problems were much bigger than one cheetah's behavior. Even though the cheetah team had nearly doubled in size, it still wasn't enough. They were juggling 3 pregnancies at once, setting up 3 enclosures, and bracing for the possible arrival of over 10 cubs. All hands were on deck. The once junior vet who had helped with Milani's first birth was now leading one of 2 teams, managing surveillance, health checks, and assisting with labor. For 2 weeks straight, he barely got any rest and was often seen catching sleep right at the zoo. But he stayed committed. With limited resources, there was no room for mistakes. Personally, the young vet was especially focused on Vela, the fierce first-time mother. But it wasn't just her attitude that worried him. Ultrasound scans showed she was carrying 7 cubs, putting her and the litter at serious risk. He didn't want to lose another cub, but deep down, he knew the odds weren't in their favor. Once again, the young vet watched with nerves as Vela followed the same birthing steps Milani had gone through. He was the one who entered the enclosure to run the tests and confirm the outcome. Tragically, history repeated itself. Not 1, but 2 of Vela's cubs didn't survive. Both had similar breathing issues. Filled with guilt and sorrow, the team found comfort in knowing they had done everything they could. And in truth, across the 3 pregnancies, they had achieved remarkable success. In just 11 days between March and April, all 3 cheetahs delivered their cubs, 13 in total. Wai gave birth to 5 cubs, while Milani added 3 more to her little family. Considering the critical state of the cheetah population, with fewer than 7,500 remaining in the wild, these 13 new cubs were a major victory. And this was just one of many successes to come. The sudden boom in cubs brought national attention, more donations, and fresh energy into the conservation program. A new annual event called the Run Wild Race was launched at the zoo to raise funds. The momentum kept growing, and years later, they shattered their own record, delivering 19 cubs in just a few days. The number of cheetahs born at the zoo over the past decade reached an incredible 90. It marked a turning point, helping shift the cheetah's classification away from vulnerable. And it all began with Milani. Though she's likely too old for another pregnancy now, Milani stays busy raising her 7 rapidly growing cubs. Since her very first litter, she's developed a new trust in her caretakers, letting them near and even cuddling with them at times. All those years of effort had finally paid off. What an incredible story. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Until next time.